Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon Podcast, episode 7. Podcast with Lee Perryman, who came to visit for his first stalk to Aberdeen. You will see that Lee's obviously got a presence on social media, and we'll crack on with that podcast. Bit of an update, it was supposed to be a podcast with Empire cartridges. However, due to technical difficulties and just timings, we will bring you that podcast later on. I'll apologise now for the sound quality. We did record this in a gatehouse that Lee was staying at in a very echoey kitchen. So there might be some funny noises that come back and a few bumps and bashes on the table and things like that. But obviously we'd just come back in from stalking, butchering a deer and all the rest of it. So probably a bit tired by the time we were doing this podcast. Hello, so we have another podcast here today and we have Lee Perryman. Most of you will know him from Instagram, being the airgun shooter, face of Harkila and pro staff for Pulsar. So where are we at the moment? Well, he's travelled all the way up to Scotland and we are currently sat in a wonderful gatehouse just outside the town of Turriff. The estate dates back to 1346 and we're here just to record this podcast regarding obviously Lee's first deer stalk and a bit of history about him. So I'll pass you over to Lee now, who's going to sort of give us a bit of an insight as to how he got into shooting, and we'll see where this podcast goes from there.
Hi Peter, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I've been shooting airguns now for 24 years. I don't really know how I got into it. I just one day fancied to get an air rifle, you know. So for my first air rifle was a Perryman Rapid 7.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously one of the best at the time, but I just started a new job, so I just fancied something nice. So I went for that, and I can actually remember snapping the magazine
right
on my first load.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, because the Rapids were obviously, they were sort of they started off being a bit of a rough and ready airgun, weren't they? They were sort of manufactured, knocked together, and everybody liked to customise them.
But they're just complete workhorses in the field. You know, they don't let you down, and very good rifles. So things just spiralled from there. I didn't really take to social media for, a couple of years ago. I used to shoot for Day State for 8 years. So I used to send my photos directly to them. I never really posted anything on social media. But when lockdown came, I thought, maybe I'll just start an account, put a few things on there and see what happened.
Yeah, because you seem to have a fair following and it's grown pretty well.
Yeah, well, I write for Airgun Shooting Magazine, but I'm not actually on board with them. So I just write what I want and the products I want to review. So I just give honest reviews.
I think that's one of those things nowadays, isn't it? We were discussing it, I think, when we were out in the field about honest reviews of kit and stuff like that. And sometimes you find that kit potentially is reviewed because somebody's been given it free and they want to write a good review because they feel sort of embarrassed not to.
Yeah, obviously. Well, this weekend's taught us a valuable lesson. You know, we've had the right kit to go out and do what we've done. So if you just take something for the sake of taking it because it's free, but it doesn't actually work and it's not going to do what you need it to do, it's a waste of time showing it to people, you know.
So we'll just set the scene. So obviously I was talking to some of the Harkila staff at the Scone Game Fair, and a discussion came up about deer stalking, and I put out an invitation, and one of the chaps, Phil, had basically said, oh, my friend Lee wants to really go stalking. So I sent Lee an invitation to come up to Aberdeenshire and potentially get his first deer. His comment to me, his exact words to me were, I want something that's a challenge. So this weekend we made it a challenge, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. To be honest, in the past I've been offered a few deers, but I've had the kind of inkling that they were like farm park deers,
right? Which
I'm so grateful for the offers. But for my first deer, I wanted to work for it.
Well, I think we worked for it. Obviously, as I said to you, clear fell is something that's is pretty tricky to work across. So yeah, it was certainly an experience. I think we'll come on to that later on in the podcast and discuss that. But you obviously test a lot of kit, and everybody who watches your social media profile sees you shoot a lot of squirrels and rabbits. How do you think that your kit, compared to somebody like me who's obviously a deer stalker, do you think the Harkila kit or the Pulsar kit has the same place in the airgun market as it does for the deer stalking market?
Yeah, I think obviously up where we are now in Scotland, the conditions are a lot harsher than what we have back home, but we're still going out into the same field, into the same forest, into the same rain, into the same mud. So, well, unless you're a sofa shooter, what we've been talking about, you need good kit in the field.
No, absolutely. And you find something, I think, that actually just works, don't you? You find a piece of kit you trust in, and then you kind of stick with it.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that, And what I'm using at the moment is just absolutely perfect for my needs.
Excellent. Oh, that's good to know. So obviously, yeah, because you've been out and you've had different bits of kit on test and showing me different things that you've been using throughout the week. What do you think the sort of the best piece of clothing you've got in that lineup really is at the moment?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. The best piece of clothing.
Yeah, the best piece. Your go-to. Let's just say.
I really like my Harkila Ragnar trousers at the moment.
Okay.
I think they're just comfy, silent, and they're not a nice garment,
So are they a lightweight summer trouser, or are they a winter trouser, or are they sort of a thicker material?
They're more of a summer wear.
Okay.
And they've got the Scandinavian look about them as well, which I kind of like.
Okay, yeah. No, that's obviously, yeah, you've seen me. It's mostly the old Pro Hunter trousers, purely. They're a thick old trouser and things like that. They're used and abused, and that's what works. As I said, we've already discussed that. We find a piece of kit that works for us and we don't change it. So let's talk about why you're here, really. So, yeah, we were going deer stalking. So Lee arrived, and the first thing I wanted to do was to get him out to have a go with the different types of rifle. And he had a choice. He could either shoot a 223, which in Scotland is a deer legal caliber. It's not a deer legal caliber in England, but it is a deer legal caliber, but it's not legal for roe in England. So it's legal to take a roe deer in Scotland with a 223. But also I gave him the opportunity to shoot the old trusty 308. So we met up and we basically set some targets up and we let him have a go. So, yeah, how did you get on with that?
Well, I've never met you before, Peter. When you post a lot on social media, you kind of like saying you can like shoot a little bit. You're putting all these photos out, but you're out and you're doing this. You've driven 8 hours up to Scotland. You stood in a very windy field, shooting off quad sticks, what you don't shoot of, shooting a gun, what you've never shot before, shooting next to a friend you've never shot next to before. So, the odds are kind of like stacking up against you. But, I love shooting the gun. I think we were bang on.
Yeah, so we set 2 targets out for Lee. First of all, we set him out a zeroing target, just about 100 yards down the field. And then we set one of my classic that everybody will have seen if they followed my social media feed, is my black hardwood or timber deer silhouettes. So it kind of gives you the feeling of you've got this black target to actually try and find an aim point on. So yeah, as Lee was saying, I think he normally shoots off Primos trigger sticks, which were my go-to, but I was given a set of quad sticks to play with, and I thought, well, if I've got guests up, they're all going to shoot off these quad sticks, so we threw them straight in at the deep end, quad sticks and the 223, and said, hit that target, please.
Yeah, the quad sticks. I've been out with Phil Taylor before, and we've shot off the quad sticks, and I don't know, they're not really my thing, but it's probably because I don't use them that much. Like you said, we go to the Primos, and I use my Spartan Ascent. But obviously, when in Rome,
absolutely, you've got to you basically do what the stalker gives you at the end of the day. So yeah, well, let's just talk about that. So we set Lee up, and yeah, no problem at all. Bit of faffing to get the sticks set up, but once he was on them, I think it was a stable shooting platform, and yeah, asked him to take a shot, and yeah, you carry on.
I think we had 3 shots with a 223 and
Yep.
3 shots with a 308. 2 on each on the quad sticks and 1 on each on the Primos. And I wanted to revert back to the Primos, but I'm going to say now that Peter's Primos is heavily worn and was shaking like a dog.
Yeah, no, we were discussing this, that I showed him at the start that I've got a set of Primos sticks, and they've had some use. They really have, and the headstock on them there's probably a good 5 mil of play, and it's like it rattles around, and you set the rifle up on it, and they're rocking backwards and forwards quite happily.
Yeah, so rather than being at sea, I thought I'd go for something more stable, so I chose the quad sticks, which worked fine for me.
Yeah, it was a good test actually, because shooting on the Clearfell, I've always been sceptical that these sticks would work. So our first morning out, we met up, and we went up to a forestry block that's kind of, it was Clearfell probably 2 or 3 years ago. So the white grass has grown up, the cover's high. Lee's first comment as we got out of the car was, "Don't worry about the sticks. I'll just chuck my bag down and I can shoot off that." And I looked out the window and said to him, "You see the grass in front of us? That's the height of the cover pretty much all the way through."
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But I think my second comment, Peter, was I'm glad we're wearing 12-inch Harkila boots.
Yeah, there was that as well, because obviously we decided to trek across a fairly sketchy track that a digger had been through with water coming up through the reeds quite happily.
Yeah, I mean, this wild grass is just covering it so it looks perfectly flat. But in reality, you stop stepping in holes. So that was a totally different terrain for me as well.
Yeah, so the stalk started off, we left the vehicle, got Lee set up. He had the rifle, I'll carry the sticks. If we saw anything, the plan was I'd pop the sticks out, he would place the rifle on them and take the shot. We walked in and we spotted deer straight away. Unfortunately, these deer are on a field that we don't have permission on, and I said to Lee as soon as I'd seen one, I said, we'll probably count a number more. And I think what was the total in the end?
I think it was 7, wasn't it? Was it 7?
I think we got to 7 deer and a fantastic buck. But unfortunately, as I said, one, the distance they were away, I think range finding them, they were 400 and something odd yards.
Yep.
But also they weren't actually on our land, so it was a bit of a shame. So we carried on the morning, we trudged around the Clearfell looking for things. And eventually we picked our way across this obviously fairly boggy part and got ourselves into a good position.
Yeah, no, because we got on the ride and it was a little harder, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
So that was a lot easier.
So yeah, as we got over there, we sort of bumped that doe, and then something fantastic sort of appeared in front of us.
Yeah. We were just walking down the ride, and to our right we see 2 youngsters, and they were just sitting there. So we just stopped back for a while and to see what was going to happen, and then they came out onto the ride in front of us. So obviously, being youngsters, we just observed them. I got my camera out to record them, and unfortunately, I never even pressed record. On a magical moment.
Spur of the moment, literally, you could stroke these two yearlings, and I've got this camera next to me thinking, oh, he's getting all of this on recorded. And after they disappeared and disappeared back into the undergrowth and headed off up the field to find Mum, there was a comment of like, oh, that didn't record, which was a bit of a shame, really, because it was a real magical moment.
Yeah, that was really nice to see,
So we kind of concluded the morning at that point, and we went and got some lunch because obviously by that time it was coming up for midday. I said to Lee, we're going to just nip into to another bit of forestry. It's another Clearfell. It fell down in Storm Arwen. They've just finished harvesting and getting all the timber out. So drove round, big timber stacks. We're driving up the track, and I think it was, I can't remember who spotted it, but to our left there was a fantastic buck in probably about 100 yards down in the Clearfell.
Yeah, he was absolutely gorgeous, wasn't he? And we stopped the truck. We see him, he see us. So then Peter rolled the truck back behind a log pile, and we slowly made our way out to the truck, to the log pile and around it, but unfortunately gone.
I think as we rolled back and disappeared and spent a few minutes sort of trying to get rifles and kit sorted out, he'd made his descent back to the tree line, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So the decision, I said to Lee after that, it changed all the plans, because obviously this Clearfell had been fairly disrupted and we haven't seen many deer on it. But to see him up there, it was like, right, well, we'll make plans differently for that evening, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll kind of let Lee tell the story from that point on.
Yeah. So Peter picked me up later in the afternoon, and made our way back to that same permission. Parked up, had a chat about things, discussed what we were going to do, had a safety check, and then started the stalk. I think I was concentrating on something else at the time, but Peter spotted the same buck in the middle of the Clearfell. So we both dropped to our knees. This is about 40 yards out from the edge of the Clearfell. So then, rather than just walk into it, we crawled on our stomachs for about 40 yards to the edge of the Clearfell. I managed to get a really nice stump so I could get on the bipod, and there he was, still in the middle. We had the wind. Wind was right in our favour at the time.
Yeah, the wind was absolutely fantastic. You couldn't have asked for almost. It was almost too strong, but it was enough to disguise any noises or communication perfectly. And there was no way in any way we were going to scent this. And continually spotting that buck for Lee, he had no idea there was anybody there.
No, it was just a perfect scenario how it was playing out. You know, at some points I thought, you know, it can't really be this good. Something was going to happen.
It was almost like, yeah, as a friend sent us a message after we'd taken the buck. It's like, oh, good job I tied that to a stick for you, wasn't it? So it stayed there. But yeah, you couldn't have asked for better. Broadside, the buck kept looking down the hillside. It wasn't moving. He was quite happily just browsing away. Lee seemed to be quite stable. Couple of asking checks every time. Are you able to take the shot? Can you see? Unfortunately, my position was probably about a foot lower than Lee, and all I kept seeing was sort of a few twigs obscuring this buck. But where Lee was, up with the rifle, it's my Tikka M65, 595 even, sorry, in 223, with a lovely meoptoscope on it, 4A reticle in there. I think everything was set up right. Magnification of 8, you could see the buck clear as day. It was bright, it wasn't dark. We'd only been in the woods probably less than 45 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of quick what we did, but it wasn't rushed at all. It was all executed to perfection, really, wasn't it? I mean, how it just laid out, it rolled out for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're in that position now, and Lee's up on that stump, made sure he's comfortable, everything's right. And yeah, basically controlling his breathing. You're always there when you've got somebody out stalking and you're listening to everything. I was probably more tense than he was at that point, going, this is a cracking buck to take and everything's right. So carry on with yeah.
I mean, I haven't actually said this to you before, Peter, but I'm actually glad that I was on the stump with the bipod rather than not stood up with the quad sticks.
No, I kind of assumed that would be the case. I was fully expecting that you'd have liked the position, and that's why when we got out the car, when I got there, I said, I'm going to put the bipod on for you because there's a good opportunity and a chance that we can use some of the natural terrain or a stump to potentially get a shot.
Yeah.
So the topography of the land that we're actually shooting on is kind of a hill, and all the rides from all corners of this permission lead up to an apex point, which is where we were. So because it had been recently felled, all the stumps were fairly fresh. There was no high cover in there, and kind of had an inkling that this, if we'd seen the buck there earlier on in the day, he was going to pop back out. So yeah, by walking in right to this center point, we could play the game out in our favor, which we did, I think.
Yeah, I do not think that, even if we went to that buck and asked him to move a foot in a different direction, we'd have got a better shot.
No, absolutely. The positioning was great. He did move just before Lee took the shot. He took a step, actually, which probably made his positioning even better. He stepped down the hill slightly more, just putting himself in a much better position to actually take the shot. So yeah, at that point, can I take the shot? Yes, you can take the shot. Yes, you can take the shot. Take the shot when you're ready. And I just heard a crack above my head as the 223 went off. And yeah, I'll let Lee give you his feelings and what happened next.
So we waited for a few minutes. I got my breathing under control because I was actually pretty hyped up, I mean, I've still got Peter next to me, who I don't really know.
Exactly.
I've still got the setup I don't know, and the terrain, but everything got controlled, and I took the shot. Watched the buck through the scope. He jumped about 10 foot and then fell. So I was pretty happy with that. So myself and Peter waited for 30 minutes, and then we made our way down to him. Yeah,
just before making our way down, actually a smaller pricket walked straight back in. It's a little spiker, so probably a year old, 2 years old, just walked back into the clear fell.
Yeah.
Right in front. I think Lee's buck was 158 yards, and this guy was about 100 yards away. And I'm like, do you want another one? Because it's there. He's like, no, you take it. I'm like, no, it's fine. We'll leave him for another day. So we watched him as well for a bit, and he was quite happily musing around and just kicking about in the clear fell at the same time.
Well, I don't think I could have took the shot, Peter, to be honest, because the adrenaline was running through like 10 cans of Red Bull at the time. So it wouldn't have been proper for me to even try and take the shot at that point.
No, absolutely. And so that was that. So we watched this guy. I did put the rifle just up on sticks just to have a better look at him and just to identify what was going on. But yeah, as I said, he was probably a year-old, 2-year-old little buck. Lots of potential. Might come out next year. Might not actually be in the clear fell next year, because it is actually going to be, as I said to Lee, it's going to get completely and utterly deer fenced, and that particular area I have to completely clear. When it goes for its replant, there can be no deer in there, so it is a coal zone. And the two bits of woodland I took into to start with were both sort of a shoot on sight policy. We're not there to grow things on. We're there to let things develop. But at the moment, this clear fell that we're on hasn't been fenced, so there's no point in shooting that just for the sake of shooting it. We might as well let him have a bit more life. Wait for him to develop a bit, and maybe one of the other boys can have a pop at him next year.
Yeah. But yeah, so obviously after we see the other one Peter just explained, we made our way down. We found its blood trail and followed it in, and there he was on the floor.
So yeah, I was explaining to Lee that a lot of people now in deer stalking have kind of, some of them have lost the way with the ability to track, and if they can't find it within like a few feet, they'll call somebody in with a deer dog. But made Lee get down on his hands and knees and start trying to find specks of blood. And fairness to him, absolutely bang on, a tiny speck of blood on I think it was on one of the stumps, wasn't it? It was
which you didn't even think it was blood.
I just thought it was a red mark on a piece of wood, but no, that was it. And then he picked up another one, and we just walked that straight to the deer.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Obviously, sent Lee in to do the test on the deer to make sure. That was kind of one of the things. Asked the question, do you know how to check that this deer is actually expired? And so I'm sure he can explain what I made him do.
Yeah, so Peter explained that when we approach a deer, we approach it from the head area, and we poke the eye with our quad sticks, with a stick. Obviously, that's a major reaction point for the deer. So if it was still alive, if it was, hurt, it would jump straight away. But in this case, it had gone already.
No, absolutely. The shot placement and the reaction shot on that deer said that everything was right. Watching it from back when he took the shot, absolute classic signs. Deer jumps, front legs out, and I just watched it unfold. It probably ran 10 yards, wrapped round a stump, and didn't get up again. So I knew that it was down and it wasn't going to be moving, but obviously it's good for a new stalker to go through the whole process and see how it's done, because there are some times that you'll go down and you think you've shot it, and actually it could still be, you might have shot it through the spine, so it's still actually going, and but you've got to dispatch it at that point. So everything was done to the book to make sure that the whole process was seen. The big question now really is, obviously Lee shoots a lot. He shoots a lot of squirrels, shoots a lot of rabbits, but I think this is sort of the biggest mammal you would have taken.
Yeah, of course it is. I'll be honest with you, Peter, on the drive up here, I'm thinking about it, and, I haven't come for medals. I've come for an experience, and, the thought was lingering in my head if I could even pull the trigger. But because I love my field sports, my passion is air guns, but I do like to experience different things.
No, absolutely, yeah, I can see that, and I think we discussed that at the time, that obviously it's complete. It's not completely different. A life's a life, and a squirrel still has its life, and a rabbit and a deer is just a big rabbit at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think when you actually get up close to it, there's something different about them, isn't there?
Yeah, because I kind of chatted you through that. If you were sat next to me with your deer, and I was sat with my squirrel in my hand, you look, kind of more prestigious because you've got the big buck and I've got the little squirrel. But in essence, to get to my little squirrel, I'd probably have to work a little bit harder sometimes to get into that proximity to take him.
No, absolutely. And we were discussing that. Obviously, the airgun shooter, sub 12 foot-pounds airgun, you're getting up close and personal to those things. You're getting sort of within 20 to 30 yards, and everything there is pretty aware of what's going on. That buck would have been well aware of us. We were only 150 yards away from it, but we had everything in our favour at that time.
Yeah. So let's jump back a little bit now. So obviously we've just talked about the getting in 20 to 30 yard. So when I arrived on Friday, Peter wanted to see that I could shoot and perform well with his rifles, which went okay. And I think Peter's second test on the Saturday was to take us through a very wooded tree line with heavily dropped branches to see how I'd fare. And I think what he said was something about he thought he had a shadow with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's so nice. Obviously, I take a lot of people out stalking, and one of the keys is it's a bit of a test to see how noisy that person's going to be, because I started stalking Sika deer, and we were discussing that if you make a noise or close the car door, everything for the next couple of miles pretty much knows you're there. So I've always been taught to stalk a little and look a lot. And it was like, well, let's just see how well this guy who I've never stalked with is going to do. We walked down the first track, pretty quiet, took him into the tunnel through the trees that a few people that have been out stalking will know exactly where it is. It has low branches. The ground is like a tinderbox, but I really almost didn't hear Lee following me up that track, and that's key. So all the rest of the stalking, I didn't have to worry about somebody putting heavy footsteps down, grunting, making noise, coughing, anything like that. So it's like, this is perfect. This is just going to work out really well.
Yeah. So it's going back to about what you said about the clothing and the environments we're in. It's all the same environments and same clothing,
Exactly, and I think that's one of the keys. And quality hunting gear, if you take it that way, you want to be able to move in it and not make a noise. And unfortunately, there's other products out there that people buy, and they're incredibly noisy, really, really noisy. Like you walk down a track, and it's just like you've got shh, 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 and you're just like, this is just we're not going to do this. But you get away with it with the row on a good windy day.
Yeah.
But on a completely still day, it's a game. It's another thing altogether.
Is it like one of those 80s shell suits?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's just one of those things that it can be so distracting, and if we can hear it, the animals of the forest whose hearing is far better than ours probably know you're coming.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the keys. So yeah, I was happy that you could stalk with no problems there. And I was willing to push Lee that bit further as well. And it's like, if that deer comes out at 200 yards, I've got no problems. My rifle is perfectly zeroed. You're a staple shot. You can take it. The look on his face was sort of like, I'm not going to be taking a 200-yard shot at a deer.
Yeah, but I felt comfortable.
Yeah.
Else I wouldn't have taken the shot.
No, absolutely. And we ranged it and we checked that deer and 158 yards. And I said to him, look, that 223 will drop it perfectly.
Yeah.
So no issues there. So we were discussing that obviously you pulling the trigger is kind of the clinical bit. As long as that goes right and the deer's down, that's the easy part done.
Yeah.
Then basically it was take the deer over to the tree line, and I was going to do a fully suspended grollock so that Lee could get instead of obviously just grollicking a deer on the floor and rushing away with it and going, that's it, we're done, as a lot of people that would pay for a stalk would happen. And the guide would get in there, he'd get the innards out, that deer would be back in the truck, they'd be off the permission, drop back at the accommodation, and that would be back in the larder. I like to put everybody through their paces and show them everything, and I think Lee was very keen to get over there and actually get that deer out, grollock it, and go through the process. So yeah, we basically started finding the tree. I pointed to a tree and said, I want to go to that tree over there with the two spiky bits, and Lee's like, we're in a forest.
yeah, I can remember saying that. Thought, is he joking with me or what?
so we set off across the clear fell to the actual tree line, and I've got two stainless steel hooks in my pocket, and basically showed Lee where to put two cuts in the back leg, and then hung it up into the tree. And I'll let you carry on describing what the next part of the process was, because obviously it's all new to you.
Yeah, well, I was kind of in mixed emotions already about shooting the deer, you know. I mean, I haven't done it before. I kind of felt, a bit sad about it. I'm not a killer. But yeah, and the second part, I wanted the whole experience. So this is why I wanted to go through this with Peter and properly grollock the deer, even if it would have made me a bit queasy, But Peter showed me expertly how to go on, what to cut where, what incisions, and yeah, it just fantastic experience with that.
No, absolutely, and it was really nice to see that Lee had a lovely knife in his pocket. Now sometimes you're never sure whether the hunter that's coming out with you, they've got a sharp knife. As most people know, my knives are usually like razor blades, and they need to be, but the knife was sharp, everything I asked him to do was great. And the process began. So yeah, we hung the deer in the tree, and it didn't have to be fast. It was dead at this point, so it's not going to run away or go anywhere. But it was a case of trying to guide Lee through everything, to show him the whole process from start to finish.
I will like to say that it is the first time I've held a male's penis, Peter.
And it wasn't mine. It was
no.
Mr. Buck, who was quite well endowed, and it was quite a joke saying to him, you got to hold on to that and cut around it.
But I do think it's fantastic how, Peter showed me the hoofs. He showed me what to look for, signs of disease, infections, or anything like that. It's just very knowledgeable.
Yeah, so the little buck that we took, well, not so little, had been through the wars. So the rut was around about end of July, beginning of August. This guy had a broken tine, but something I hadn't seen ever on a deer was he's got two chipped front teeth. We'll try and get photos once we prep the skull and stick it up online. So doing the grollock and opening them up as well. We're going through, everything was pretty normal, but he had a bit of a sticky lung, which is obviously an indicator that he may have had a bit of pneumonia or something like that. There was no major concerns. We were obviously, first thing you worry is, has this deer got TB or something like that? So checked the lungs, inspected everything, but no, just sticky lung. So kind of in some ways a really good deer to have taken out of the picture. He's obviously had a hard time during the rut. He's probably been booted out by a stronger male. And also, with this sticky lung, will he make it through the winter? We were discussing whether or not that winter was going to be hard this year. So in many ways, it was a good deer for Lee to see, because if you open a deer up and it's absolutely perfect, that's great. But if you open a deer up that's got a few little problems, it's nicer and something to take away with you and be able to look at, isn't it, really?
Yeah, no, I appreciated taking the deer more after Peter explained that it, because of how it's lived its life, that it probably wouldn't have made the winter this year.
Yeah, acting completely normally, but yeah, he definitely had some issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, at that point, obviously we finished up, did any necessary bits that we needed to do, tidied up, put the grollock into the woods for the wildlife to eat, and we made our way out of the woods really, and that was the end of the stalk. And I think Lee was quite happy to get home and get a coffee at that point.
Yeah, a glass of whiskey, Peter.
Yeah, actually, forget the coffee. He could do with a glass of whiskey. But yeah, no, absolutely, it was. It's one of those things. It's a lot to take in, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was still mixed emotions. Probably when I woke up this morning about it, thinking about it.
And that makes you human in many ways. I think anybody that's so cool and just takes it in their stride, sometimes you have to wonder if that's the way they are just about taking a deer, how are they about the rest of life? At least you can see you're a human being if there's a few emotions going on there.
Yeah.
This afternoon, I believe, we're going to go through the process of actually butchering that deer up, packing it up, sticking it in the freezer so that when Lee gets back down to England, he's got some tasty venison to eat.
Is that 8 hours back down to England, Peter?
It's 8 hours. It's a long way to come to Aberdeenshire, but I guarantee anybody that comes here, it's probably one of the best experiences they'll ever take with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to come up here. I wanted the hard stalk. I wanted to be with somebody who knew what he was doing, and I got that. Fantastic.
So yeah, that's basically, that was the deer stalk. We'll hop back out and look at some of the bits that some of the other bits of kit that Lee uses, and see if he'll take anything he's learnt from obviously the stalk up here back with him, for the tracking of squirrels and things like that. So if there was any bit of kit you could have had with you, what do you think it would have been?
In all honesty, Peter, I liked my Spartan Ascent tripod.
Okay, right. Can you explain why?
Because, we spoke about noises, we spoke about taking the safety off, rolling the safety off.
Yep.
The Spartan kit, it's very fast, very lightweight to be carrying around like we did.
Yeah.
It's quick, stable, and, I feel comfortable using that as well.
Okay, so yeah, Lee obviously had my rifle, and on that rifle, it had a Harris non-swivel bipod. And I think I was adjusting the legs for him to get him a bit more stability just for speed, because I was lying right next to the front end of it, so it was easy for me just to reach over. So with that Spartan bipod, how easy is it to adjust your legs?
Very easy. It's just a click, and they just extend.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
It's very.
So
very
not
quick.
like where I'm pulling it out and trying to twist a little knob to lock it into place. Obviously, that Harris bipod is an old bipod.
Yeah.
But it does the job.
Yeah, Harris are tried and tested.
They are, but they're noisy and they're heavy.
Yeah.
So if you obviously the 223 is quite a light rifle.
Yep.
I wasn't making Lee drag around the Cannon, which is my 308 with a heavy barrel on it, and there's a fair weight with that, and you know it after a few days of walking about the place. So is there anything else that you'd have wanted here, or was there everything?
I think everything was absolutely perfect, what I expected.
Yeah. The optics you were using, can you explain what binoculars you've got?
Yeah, I was using the GPO Range Guide 2800s rangefinders.
Okay.
I mean, the German glass on them, absolutely fantastic. Worked well. Super pinged.
So the reason, okay, just explain. Obviously, I've got a set of Steiner,
Yep.
which aren't rangefinders, and I've got a separate rangefinder. Why are you? I don't normally get my rangefinder out, as we explained about telegraph poles or electricity poles,
Yep.
distances, and fence posts. So I'm kind of a bit more sort of, I'll take a guess at the distance and work it from that. Why is a rangefinder so important to you?
Because most of my shooting concern is woodland shooting.
Okay.
So I don't have the luxury of fence poles everywhere and, Mansfield's 20 miles away kind of thing.
Okay, right.
So, and distance up in trees, you get a bit... sometimes you just can't judge it.
Okay.
So, as we spoke about, I'd rather take a clean kill.
Yep. No.
So I use my rangefinders every time.
Do you think also because you're shooting, I think we discussed ballistics and you're
Yep.
shooting a sub 12 air gun. I think at some point you were a bit sort of concerned about the hold over and hold under of my rifle. I'm like, no, just aim on, it's there. Whereas you said that doesn't work with an air gun, does it?
No, I think the question was to, we've zeroed in at 100. If we want to shoot at 200, how much holdover would we have to give it? And I think the answer was nearly nothing.
That's right, yep.
But if I was zeroed at 30 and I wanted to shoot at 60 with a sub 12 pound air gun, I'd have to go a couple of inches over.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
And that's a 2-2 you're shooting, isn't it, as well?
Mostly 2.2s, yeah.
Yeah, so I think for anybody that knows, obviously you got 177 and 2.2 are the main sort of calibers in
Yeah.
air guns. But the old 2.2 is a bit like is bowling a cricket ball, as it used to be.
Yeah.
It's kind of such a loopy trajectory. You've got that little lump of lead flying through the air, but it's kind of doing a massive arc to get to where it goes. So I think that's the thing. When you step up to the old powder burners, that 223 is putting out a 55 grain bullet head, and I think we were saying it was 3,700 foot per second.
Yep.
So it is absolutely flying along, and realistically the 223 is probably flat trajectory until about 300 yards.
Yep.
So yeah, it's taking somebody that shoots obviously sort of low. They're not, well, they are lower power, but
Yep.
they're perfectly capable and they do exactly what they're supposed to do. Moving them up to something that pushes that boundary out and doesn't have the same drop off.
Yeah.
It's a bit to get your head around at the end of the day, isn't it? So,
Yeah, I think so,
but no, performance wise, just going back to the targets, had no issues there. So we put him on the quad sticks, first shot down at the deer target, absolutely spot on.
Well, actually, we didn't know it was spot on because we couldn't see it.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought I'd pulled it.
That's right. So when we actually put him on the deer silhouette on the quad sticks, he put a shot in probably about half an inch just from sort of one of the marker points on it. And then we put him on the Primos sticks and they were all wobbly and all the rest of it, but he cloverleafed that next to the first bullet. So I'm like, yeah, at that point, I had no issues at all. You could shoot, didn't matter what we took out. But the quad sticks were the perseverance.
Yeah. I mean, the quad sticks are nice. I suppose if you use them more, you'll be able to set them up quicker, be more efficient with them. But as well, I think some of the terrain we were working on, I don't think there'd be,
And that's always been my big thing. I've always thought that, and I've had this argument with quite a lot of guys, you can't deploy them because some of those ruts we were walking over, 2 legs just don't work. Splayed legs, you have to have the Primos where you've got 3 stable points that drop down and find their own levels.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of my biggest arguments. So yeah, I'm not going to deny they're a very stable shooting platform, but they don't work in every situation.
No.
And as we said, you have to make use of what's around you, don't you?
Yep.
At the end of the day. So now you've shot your first deer. What's the plans going forward?
I really don't know. Because my passion is air guns, so I'm always going to stop with them. But the experience is there. I don't know. There's another 5 deers.
There are. Yep.
So
and you're very lucky where you are because access to those 5 deers is pretty straightforward. It's not an 8-hour drive, and you can have them all in about 2 or 3. To be honest.
So, that could always be a go. But, next week, when I get home late Monday night, and when I get up Tuesday, I've got to put my game face back on. I've got to get back the airguns out because I've got a little HFT competition in a couple of weeks. So I've got to practice my holdovers and hold-unders for that as well.
Okay. So it's a whole different, shooting technique to what we're doing up here. And anybody that's ever followed the airgun shooters, it's something completely different when they're sat there, obviously having to shoot targets at distances and hold over, hold under, and trying to hit something about the size of a 5p or 10p piece, isn't it? The targets.
Some of them are 5p.
Yeah, exactly. So, we've got a target that's sort of the size of a dinner plate at 100 yards, and these guys are shooting a 5p piece at 30 yards.
Yeah. So, but it's all great fun.
Fantastic. Well, as somebody commented, the best stalk would be when you'll go off for open hill red stag. It's future things to come from it.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I'd like to say that we did video the whole grolling,
Yeah.
So maybe we'd probably put that out at some point.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So obviously we've tried to get as much footage of this weekend as possible as well.
And you can see Peter telling me off because I did make a little mistake. I've put my knife. Where did I put my knife, Peter?
Oh, well, that's right. Yeah, the first thing was stick the knife in the soil, and it's like, no, you don't. That's contamination. So it was just explaining to Lee about obviously trying to keep knives and things like that off the ground, and basically keep clean at the end of the day. But other than that, for a first grollock, the carcass is perfectly acceptable. I've seen worse from professional stalkers.
I was thinking about that actually, Peter. If you went to a restaurant and you ordered a steak, would you go outside and put your knife on the floor and then take it back and start eating your steak again?
Probably not. Exactly. So you can understand. Okay, yeah, we are in the field and things are a bit different. But even so, as long as the key, which we did, we probably took the deer a lot further down in the field than we normally would if we were having to drag it out. But because there was two of us and we actually carried the carcass out, we hung it up on a stick so nothing was touching the floor, and we walked it out to the extraction point where we could drive in, transfer it into a carcass carrier in the back of my motor, and I could get it back to the larder. There was no risk of that deer getting contamination in any way. That was kind of really good. Going forward, is there any plans? Is there anything new coming up in Harkila or Pulsar that you want to talk about?
Well, of course there is, Peter. These big companies are always working on the next step.
Okay.
But unfortunately, I don't know, and if I did know, I wouldn't be able to tell you anyway.
That's all right. So we'll have to keep watching what Lee comes up with and see what the next best thing is that's coming out of these. But obviously, if there's any questions you've got about kit, this guy's testing it and he is putting it through its paces, and it's always handy. It's been quite an experience actually, listening and seeing some of the items that you've brought with you and looking at the technology that they've been throwing at stuff and where it's come from. Obviously, my Harkila kit's old and well used, and your stuff is well used, but at least it's slightly newer than mine and probably a damn sight more waterproof in some cases.
But I do like it when you say your stuff is old and well used. It's because it means it's still going.
Testimony, absolutely. Well, you look at I've got a pair of Pro Hunter trousers on because we're just about to go back out for a stalk after we finish this recording. And I was saying to Lee, look at the holes in them. But every hole in there probably has a story behind it and something to tell about it. But they still work, and that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, story pants.
Yeah, exactly, story pants. And do they stand up by themselves? And that was it, yeah.
Memory makers.
Absolutely. So we'll probably bring this podcast to an end. We're just reaching the sort of the 50-minute mark.
Yeah.
I think we've covered pretty much everything. Lee's had his first deer stalking experience in the northeast of Scotland. I think it pretty much went down well. He seems to be buzzing from it. We're about to go out again. I'll apologise now for the sound quality. We did record this in a gatehouse that Lee was staying at, in a very echoey kitchen. So there might be some funny noises that come back and a few bumps and bashes on the table and things like that. But obviously we'd just come back in from stalking, butchering a deer and all the rest of it. So probably a bit tired by the time we were doing this podcast. bit of a dreary day today. It was beautiful yesterday, but the weather has turned a bit. But the bucks will still be out and about. They carry on no matter what, and we'll see if we can pick someone else out from it.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for taking your time away from your family this weekend, Peter. And it's been an absolutely amazing experience.
No problem at all.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. We are going to try and copy this audio onto a video and then upload it onto YouTube. So the video should give you some of the scenes of what's been going on, the stalks, some of the bits we've shot, some of the butchery at the end and all the rest of it. So hopefully you have an audio commentary of the podcast over the top of that. And yeah, it should be something a bit different. We'll try that. That brings this recording to an end. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed it. If there's any questions or comments, please ping them over. If there's anything else you'd like to hear about or anything like that, I'm sure Lee can answer questions or I can answer the questions. And we will see you in a period of time. I can't really say anymore. It's going to be 2 weeks or a month. It's just they're coming out when they're coming out, and as time goes by and we get some more guests organised and we stop running into these technical problems, we will keep releasing podcasts. All right, we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.